We're live. I just got back from a 16-mile bike ride um, on 16th Street. Well, a bunch of streets around DC. Went all the way to the White House. Uh, Parked my bike right in front of the Lafayette Park, and had some water, and then got back on my bike and rode back another 8 miles or so. Here's a few things that occurred to me. First, Tilda Swinton should do a biopic of Martha Nussbaum. Who's Martha Nussbaum, you ask? Well, let me show you something. Martha Nussbaum is a philosopher that looks like that. That's Martha Nussbaum. Let me focus in on that. There we go. That gorgeous lady, lovely lady, is Martha Nussbaum. Now, she's a very interesting person. When I first showed up to St. John's College back in 2018, I went to the meme library in Santa Fe, and I checked out a copy of her book that had just been published at the time, How to Die. And it was interesting because the guy who was doing the orientation at the college was like, interesting. I was at the orientation, and he looked at the copy of How to Die or How to Learn to Die or something like that, and he was like, interesting. But anyway, now you're like, why should Tilda Swinton do a biopic of Martha Nussbaum? So you know what Martha Nussbaum looks like. Now let's look at Tilda Swinton. Tilda Swinton looks like that. That's Tilda Swinton. Do you see the resemblance? A longer hairstyle, and we'll have Tilda Swinton do Martha Nussbaum. Anyway, every time I go on a bike ride, I go outside and I'm not painting, I realize how disgusting modern societies are. It's absolutely disgusting. I mean, I try to be positive, and I listen to my Pink Floyd, and I think nice things, I think about nice things, and, but god damn it, do I hate seeing broken glass all over the street because somebody tried to steal somebody's car. What happened to civic education? What happened to classical education, ladies and gentlemen? Now I start sounding like Pink Guy, Mr. Pink Guy, or something like that. Not the pink guy from the movie Reservoir Dogs, but the pink guy on YouTube. Anyway, the point is that I see society is falling apart in so many ways. This is the problem with cities. They're so crowded. They're so goddamn fucking crowded. YouTube, please don't take down this video because I use the F word. The point is, the cities are so crowded that nobody has respect for each other, and I'm, trying to be nice, but every now and then I get on the sidewalk and I bike on the sidewalk when I'm not supposed to bike on the sidewalk. Not pink eye, pink guy. Anyway, here's something. Today is mail day. We're doing a Casey Neistat video, ladies and gentlemen. Today's mail day. So what did I get in the mail? St. John's College wants me to donate because I'm an alum of the college. All right, Mr. Roosevelt, Mr. Dean Sterling, Miss Davis, the new assistant dean in Santa Fe, or the new dean in Santa Fe. Let's see if you can persuade me to give you $1 a year. No, actually, it's interesting, right? I mean, they included an envelope with the advert here, the podcast advert. It says, okay, let's read this. What keeps St. John's College alive in the world? Your gift supports the rare inquiry and conversations that come to life at St. John's, period. The philanthropy of donors like you, okay, so they're now considering me a philanthropist. That's nice of them. Like you funded continuing the conversation. Well, that's a waste of money. Nobody should have funded continuing the conversation. That should have been free. Bringing great discussion on great books into homes everywhere, right? Even in Saigon or Mozambique, to a place like that, right? Giving preserves our historic campuses and allows us to enroll new generations of students who will become the next alumni to live and act on and examine life across the world. Hey, 300 kids go to St. John's College in Santa Fe, and about 300 other kids go to St. John's College in Annapolis. Not all of them can claim to live an examined life, okay? That's the fact. Now, my tagline on pleasebekind.com and also glaucon.org is an unexamined life is a funny one, rather tragically. The reason why I say that is because I'm the victim of my own mistakes. Right? I cause mayhem on my own life, and I live by the consequences of those mistakes. I never claim to live an examined life. Okay? I don't claim to live an examined life. So this absurd claim here, this aspirational thing here, the next generation of alumni to live and act on an examined life across the world. I mean, hey, I applaud your aspiration and idealism, but please don't tell lie to us. We're adults. We're grown up. Do you really want to insult a grown adult, one of your alums, by saying things like that? I mean, come on. I know the reality of the world, man. In all honesty, I would love to check this out, but I'm not going to give you any money, St. John's College. Not anytime soon. Not because I hate you, but because I have pledged to myself that I won't be giving anyone any money until I make $12 billion. And that's my promise to you. That is my promise to you. So, and that's a zero guarantee. Take that to the bank, and I'll send me something like this when I'm a billionaire. Until then, watch the show. So, what else did I get in the mail? Let's see. This is from the sheriff in town. Okay, this is my credit card statement. No need to read this. I know what mayhem I caused there. You see what I'm talking about? Everybody wants money from you these days. I swear to God. Let's see. Show us your taxes, somebody says. Hey, I'm not running for the presidency. T-Mobile? Okay, come on, man. You can't spam me. Seriously, T-Mobile? If you don't stop doing this, man, I'm going to sue you. Seriously, man. T-Mobile, stop doing this, man. Give the working man a break. Let's see what else. Okay. What is this? 20 bucks? I owe somebody 20 bucks? This is not even my fucking mail. I am so sorry. Of course you can phone into the show. Anyway, got distracted a little bit there. I opened somebody else's mail. Jesus Christ. All right. Let's see. Hopefully this one is not going to be a credit card statement. Oh my God. Somebody sent me a letter saying they need me to answer the survey. They printed, I don't know what else to say. This is the idiocy of modern society. They print letters. When I say they, human beings cut down trees, they rape and pillage the planet to print nonsense garbage like this, and then they pay people to walk door to door to put this in the mailbox so that I can go on a bike ride and show up and open my mailbox and then get upset because I receive spam, like garbage nonsense that says we need you sincerely to answer a few questions and complete this survey about how you like our services. Dude, you call me, you email me, you send me text messages, you leave voicemail messages for me to complete your goddamn survey. Listen, I'm a foreigner. I don't have time to complete your stupid surveys. I just went on a 16-mile bike ride and I pained. I don't have time to complete your goddamn survey. Enough with this T-Mobile and surgery center of Chevy Chase that did surgery on my finger. Enough already, man. I've had it with you guys. Yeah, I go on 16-mile bike rides. The aspiration is to go on a 16-mile bike ride every day, but I'm not a fake A-type. I'm not going to be like, guys, I wake up 6 in the morning and I go on my 16-mile, and then I start my day with a kale shake. I used to be that guy. No longer that guy. I don't think I've given this fair treatment, so that's what I'll do now. I'll quickly go through this. All right. I've seen this woman. She doesn't always look like this. Why is marketing material? A listener, a viewer of the show just said this stuff is propaganda. That is propaganda material. I mean, I'm sure she's a nice person, but come on, I don't think you. It's like, do you expect me to believe that on every day of the week this woman will look this happy? Google Akashic Records. All right. What else? I've opened my mail. Oh, here's the thing. Here's the thing. Oh dear God, I hope I'm not getting sick. Sure hope that I'm not getting sick. I'm just filling my water bottle. Just give me a second. Gotta hydrate. All right. That was an explosive burst of whatever that was. I just had to give it to you guys. Just had to give it to these guys. It's not okay to spam people in 2023. It's not okay. Also, if you go to college, you will get stuff like this. They will ask you for every penny that's in your name, or they'll ask you for your credit card information. Okay? I'm just saying, this is the reality. The year is 2023, and you will still get physical mail. Come on, man. Do you really want me to say the P word? Polar bears? Ice caps? Sea level rising, temperatures, global warming, climate change, deforestation, Greta Thunberg. What else do you want me to say? Enough. You know, like, no, seriously. I mean, this rant. This is the first time I've ranted. I've ranted. But I mean, this is a small thing, and I'm sure some of you will be like, "Oh, come on, let it go, man." I know I could let this go, and typically I wouldn't even care. I wouldn't even bring this stuff up to my apartment. I would just open my mailbox and just take all of this and throw it in the trash can. And sometimes, if I'm compassionate enough, I'll throw it in the recycling bin. But the point is that I could let this go. I could easily let this go, but I don't want to, because enough is enough. I mean, somebody's getting paid $60K, $40K a year salary with healthcare and benefits and all of that to deliver garbage like this. What mockery to the human spirit is this? I mean, hello. Well, people do get emails. I'm not saying continue spamming me on emails with emails, but I'm not saying that. I'm saying enough with all of it. But if you are still printing materials, you see, the thing is that the stuff that you've printed on this paper is not worth it. It's not worth printing this stuff on paper. This will just go to trash. And you know where the trash goes? It goes to landfill. Not only that, but let me remind you, there's plastic on these things. Jesus Christ. The smallest things just throw me off sometimes. Gotta give it to you. I have to spit out that anger. All right, let's offer a prayer to the universe. Oh, dear universe, please forgive us, idiots, human beings who are unkind to you and your gifts. May you guide us into the path of light, and may you do what's best for nature. Amen. That's a prayer that has to be said every day. But holy crap, man. I mean, look at this. Tilda Swinton? She should totally do a biopic of Martha Nussbaum. Tilda Swinton. A little David Bowie vibe there. This camera takes a million years to focus on anything, so that's Tilda Swinton. And let me remind you again of who Martha Nussbaum is. Nussbaum. Look, I gotta post this stuff on Twitter. People, philosophy Twitter. Don't you think that Tilda Swinton should do a biopic of Martha Nussbaum? Jesus Christ. Anyway, I'm in book 2 of The Republic, and we will continue with that. Enough of this vitriolic rant. We've heard this from Howard Stern, Joe Rogan, all the big name people. Enough with this rant. We don't want it. You guys are not here for that content. Uh, all right, so where are we? Line 373, Book 2, Section B. Okay. Then we must enlarge our city, for the healthy one is no longer adequate. We must increase it in size and fill it with a multiple of things that go beyond what is necessary for a city. Hunters, for example, and artists or imitators, many of whom work with shapes and colors, many with music. And there will be poets and their assistants, actors, choral dancers, contractors, and makers of all kinds of devices, including, among other things, those needed for the adornment of women. And so we'll need more servants too. Or don't you think that we'll need tutors, wet nurses, nannies, beauticians, barbers, chefs, cooks, and swineherds? We didn't need any of these in our earlier city, but we'll need them in this one. And we'll also need many more cattle, won't we, if the people are going to eat meat? Of course. And if we live like that, we'll have a far greater need for doctors than we did before. Much greater. And the land, I suppose, that used to be adequate to feed the populations we had then will cease to be adequate and become too small. What do you think? The same. Then we'll have to seize some of our neighbors' land if we're to have enough pasture and plow land. And won't our neighbors want to seize part of ours as well, if they too have surrendered themselves to the endless acquisition of money and have overstepped the limit of their necessities? That's completely inevitable, Socrates. Then our next step will be war, Glaucon, won't it? It will. We won't say yet whether the effect of war are good or bad, but only that we've now found the origins of war. It comes from those same desires that are most of all responsible for the bad things that happen to cities and the individuals in them. That's right. Then the city must be further enlarged, and not just by a small number either, but by a whole army, which will do a battle with the invaders in defense of the city's substantial wealth and all the other things we mentioned. Why aren't the citizens themselves adequate for that purpose? They won't be if the agreement you and the rest of us made when we were founding the city was a good one, for surely we agreed, if you remember, that it's impossible for a single person to practice many crafts or professions well. That's true. Well then, don't you think that warfare is a profession? Of course. Then should we be more concerned about cobbling than about warfare? Not at all. But we prevented a cobbler from trying to be a farmer, weaver, or builder at the same time and said that he must remain a cobbler in order to produce fine work. And each of the others, too, was to work all his life at a single trade for which he had a natural aptitude and keep away from all the others so as not to miss the right moment to practice his own work well. Now, isn't it of the greatest importance that warfare be practiced well? And is fighting a war so easy that a farmer or a cobbler or any other craftsman can be a soldier at the same time? Though no one can become so much as a good player of checkers or dice if he considers it only as a sideline and doesn't practice it from childhood. Or can someone pick up a shield or any other weapon or tool of war and immediately perform adequately in an infantry battle or any other kind? No other tool makes anyone who picks it up a craftsman or champion unless he has acquired the requisite knowledge and has had sufficient practice. If tools could make anyone who picked them up an expert, they'd be valuable indeed. Then, to the degree that the work of the guardians is most important, it requires most freedom from other things and the greatest skill and devotion. I should think so. And doesn't it also require a person whose nature is suited to that way of life? Certainly. Then our job, it seems, is to select, if we can, the kind of nature suited to guard the city. It is. By God, it is no trivial task that we've taken on, but insofar as we are able, we mustn't shrink from it. No, we mustn't. Do you think that when it comes to guarding, there is any difference between the nature of a pedigree young dog and that of a well-born youth? What do you mean? Well, each needs keen senses, speed to catch what it sees, and strength in case it has to fight out with what it captures. They both need all these things, and each must be courageous if indeed he's to fight well. Of course, And will a horse, a dog, or any other animal be courageous if he isn't spirited? Or haven't you noticed just how invincible and unbeatable spirit is? So that its presence makes the whole soul fearless and unconquerable. I have noticed that the physical qualities of the guardians are clear then. Yes. And as far as their souls are concerned, they must be spirited. That too. But if they have natures like that, Glaucon, won't they be savages to each other and to the rest of the citizens? By God, it will be hard for them to be anything else. Yes, yet surely they must be gentle to their own people and harsh to the enemy. If they aren't, they won't wait around for others to destroy the city, but will do it themselves first. That's true. What are we to do then? Where are we to find a character that is both gentle and high spirited at the same time? After all, a gentle nature is the opposite of a spirited one. Apparently, if someone lacks either gentleness or spirit, he can't be a good guardian. Yet it seems impossible to combine them. It follows that a good guardian cannot exist. It looks like it. I couldn't see a way out, but on re examining what had gone before, I said, we deserve to be stuck, for we've lost sight of the analogy we put forward. How do you mean? We overlook the fact that there are natures of the sort we thought impossible, natures in which these opposites are indeed combined. Where? You can see them in other animals too, but especially in the one to which we compare to the guardian. For you know, of course, that a pedigree dog naturally has a character of this sort. He is gentle as can be to those he's used to and knows, but the opposite to those he doesn't know. I do know that. So the combination we want is possible after all, and our search for the good guardian is not contrary to nature. Apparently not. Then do you think that our future guardian, besides being spirited, must also be by nature philosophical? How do you mean? I don't understand. It's something else you see in dogs, and it makes you wonder at the animal. um, I just wish that modern philosophical texts uh, were like this, you know? um, what? When a dog sees someone it doesn't know, it gets angry before anything bad happens to it. But when it knows someone, it welcomes him, even if it has never received anything good from him. Haven't you ever wondered at that? I've never paid any attention to it, but obviously that is the way a dog behaves. Surely, this is a refined quality in its nature and one that is truly philosophical. In what way philosophical? Because it judges anything it sees to be either a friend or an enemy on no other basis than that it knows that the one and doesn't know the other. And how could it be anything besides a lover of learning if it defines what is its own and what is alien to it in terms of knowledge and ignorance? It couldn't. But surely the love of learning is the same thing as philosophy or the love of wisdom. It is. Then may we confidently assume in the case of a human being too, that if he is to be gentle toward his own and those he knows, he must be a lover of learning and wisdom. We may. Philosophy, spirit, speed, and strength must all then be combined in the nature of anyone who is to be a fine and good guardian of our city. Absolutely. Then those are the traits a potential guardian would need at the outset. But how are we to bring him up and educate him? Will inquiry into that topic bring us any closer to the goal of our inquiry, which is to discover the origins of justice and injustice in a city? We want our account to be adequate, but we don't want it to be any longer than necessary. I certainly expect, Glaucon's brother said, that such inquiry will further our goal. Then by God, Adamantus, I said, we mustn't leave it out, even if it turns out to be a somewhat lengthy affair. Okay, somebody said something. No, we mustn't. Come then, and just as if we had leisure to make up stories, let's describe in theory how to educate our men. All right. What will their education be? Or is it hard to find anything better than that which has developed over a long period? Physical training for bodies and music and poetry for the soul? Yes, it would be hard. Now, we start education in music and poetry before physical training, don't we? Of course. Do you include stories under music and poetry? I do. Aren't there two kinds of story, one true and the other false? Yes. And mustn't our men be educated in both, but first in false ones? I don't understand what you mean. Don't you understand that we first tell stories to children? These are false on the whole, though they have some truth in them, and we tell them to small children before physical training begins. That's true. And that's what I mean by saying what we must deal with music and poetry before physical training. All right. You know, don't you, that the beginning of any process is most important, especially for anything young and tender. It's that time that it's most malleable and takes on any pattern one wishes to impress on it. Exactly. Then shall we carelessly allow the children to hear any old stories told by just anyone and to take beliefs into their souls that are, for the most part, opposite to the one we think they should hold when they are grown up? We certainly won't. Then we must, first of all, it seems, supervise the storytellers. We'll select their stories whenever they are fine or beautiful and reject them when they aren't. And we'll persuade nurses and mothers to tell their children the ones we have selected, since they will shape their children's souls with stories much more than they shape their bodies by handling them. Many of the stories they tell now, however, must be thrown out. Which ones do you mean? Well, first, look at the major stories. And by seeing how to deal with them, we'll see how to deal with the minor ones as well, for they exhibit the same pattern and have for the same effects whether they're famous or not. Don't you think so? I do, but I don't know which ones you're calling major. Those that Homer, Hesiod, and other poets. Okay, I don't know how to really pronounce. Is it Hesiod? Okay, I'm just going to say the Greek one for now. Tacitus, right? And other poets tell us, for surely they composed false stories, told them to people, and are still telling them. Which stories do you mean, and what fault do you find in them? The fault one ought to find first and foremost, especially if the falsehood isn't well told. For example, when a story gives a bad image of what the gods and heroes are like, the way a painter does, whose picture is not at all like the things he's trying to paint. You're right to object to that, but what sort of thing in particular do you have in mind? First, telling the greatest falsehood about the most important things doesn't make a fine story. I mean, Hesiodus telling us about how Uranus behaved, how Cronus punished him for it, and how he was in turn punished by his own son. And the footnote says, see Hesiodus' Theogony, lines 154 to 210, and also lines 453 to lines 506. Continuing? Okay. But even if it were true, it should be passed over in silence, not told to foolish young people. And if, for some reason, it has to be told, only a very few people, pledged to secrecy and after sacrificing, not just a pig, but something great and scarce, should hear it, so that their number is kept as small as possible. Yes, such stories are hard to deal with, and they shouldn't be told in our city, Adamantus, nor should a young person hear it said that in committing the worst crimes he's doing nothing out of the ordinary, or that if he inflicts every kind of punishment on an unjust father, he's only doing the same as the first and the greatest of the gods. No, by God, I don't think myself that these stories are fit to be told. Indeed, if we want the guardians of our city to think that it's shameful to be easily provoked into hating one another, we mustn't allow any stories about gods warring, fighting, or plotting against one another, for they aren't true. The battle of gods and giants and all the various stories of the gods hating their families or friends should neither be told nor even woven in embroideries. If we're to persuade our people that no citizen has ever hated another, and that it's impious to do so, then that's what should be told to children from the beginning by old men and women. And as these children grow older, poets should be compelled to tell them the same sort of thing. We won't admit stories into our city, whether allegorical or not, about Hera being chained by her son, nor about Hephaestus being hurled from heaven by his father when he tried to help his mother, who was being beaten, nor about the battle of the gods in Homer. The young can't distinguish what is allegorical from what isn't, and the opinions they absorb at the age are hard to erase and apt to become unalterable. For these reasons, then, we should probably take the utmost care to ensure that the first stories they hear about virtue are the best ones for them to hear. That's reasonable. But if someone asked us what stories these are, what should we say? You and I, Adamantus, aren't poets, but we are founding a city, and it's appropriate for the founders to know the patterns on which poets must base their stories and from which they mustn't deviate. But we aren't actually going to compose their poets for them. All right, but what precisely are the patterns for theology or stories about the gods? Something like this. Whether in epic, lyric or tragedy, a god must always be represented as he is. Indeed, he must. Now, a god is really good, isn't he? And must be described as such. What else? And surely nothing good is harmful. Is it? I suppose not. And can what isn't harmful do harm? Never. Or can what does no harm do anything bad? No. And can what does nothing bad be the cause of anything bad? How could it? Moreover, the good is beneficial? Yes. It is the cause of doing well? Yes. The good isn't the cause of all things, then, but only of good ones? It isn't the cause of bad ones? I agree entirely. Therefore, since a god is good, he is not, as most people claim, the cause of everything that happens to human beings, but of only a few things, for good things are fewer than bad ones in our lives. He alone is responsible for the good things, but we must find some other cause for the bad ones, not a god. That's very true, and I believe it. Then we won't accept from anyone the foolish mistake Homer makes about the gods when he says, here's a quotation from Homer, "There are two urns at the threshold of Zeus, one filled with good fates, the other with bad ones. And the other," okay, and then, end quote, right? "And the person to whom he gives a mixture of these," quotation again, "sometimes meets with a bad fate, sometimes with good," end quote. "But the one who receives his fate entirely from the second urn, quote, evil famine drives him over the divine earth," end quote. "We won't grant either that Zeus is for us," begin quote, "the distributor of both good and bad," end quote. "And as to the breaking of the promised truce by Pandarus, if anyone tells us that it was brought about by Athena and Zeus, or that Themis and Zeus were responsible for strife and contention among the gods, we will not praise him, nor will we allow the young to hear the words of Aeschylus. Quote, a god makes mortals guilty when he wants utterly to destroy a house, end quote. And if anyone composes a poem about the sufferings of Niobe, such as the one in which these lines occur, or about the house of Pelops, or the tale of Troy, or anything else of that kind, we must require him to say that these things are not the work of a god. Or if they are, then poets must look for the kind of account of them that we are now seeking, and say that the actions of God are good and just, and that those they punish are benefited thereby. We mustn't allow poets to say that the punished are made wretched and that it was a god who made them so. But we will allow them to say that bad people are wretched because they are in need of punishment, and that in paying the penalty they are benefited by the gods. And as for saying that a god who is himself good is the cause of bad things, we'll fight that in every way, and we won't allow anyone to say it in his own city, if it's well to be governed, well governed, or anyone to hear it either, whether young or old, whether in verse or prose. These stories are not pious nor advantageous to us, and not consistent with one another. I like your law, and I'll vote for it. This, then, is one of the laws or patterns concerning the gods to which speakers and poets must conform, namely that a god isn't the cause of all things, but only of good ones. And it's a fully satisfactory law? What about the second law? Do you think that a god is a sorcerer able to appear in different forms at different times, sometimes changing himself from his own form into many shapes, sometimes deceiving us by making us think that he has done it? Or do you think he's simple and least of all likely to step out of his own form? I can't say offhand. Well, what about this? If he steps out of his own form, mustn't he either change himself or be changed by something else? He must. But the best things are least liable to alteration or change, aren't they? For example, isn't the healthiest and strongest body least changed by food, drink, and labor, or the healthiest and strongest plant by sun, wind, and the like? Of course, and the most courageous and most rational soul is least disturbed or altered by any outside affection? Yes. And the same account is true of all artifacts, furniture, houses, and clothes. The ones that are good and well made are least altered by time or anything else that happens to them. That's right. Whatever is in good condition, then, whether by nature or craft, or both, admits least of being changed by anything else, so it seems. Now, surely a god and what belongs to him are in every way in the best condition. How could they fail to be? Then a god would be least likely to have in many shapes. Indeed. Then does he change or alter himself? Clearly he does, if indeed he is altered at all. Would he change himself into something better and more beautiful than himself, or something worse and uglier? It would have to be into something worse if he's changed at all, for surely we won't say that a god is deficient in either beauty or virtue. Absolutely right. And do you think, Adamantus, that anyone, whether god or human, would deliberately make himself worse in any way? No, that's impossible. Is it impossible then for gods to want to alter themselves, since they are the most beautiful and best possible? It seems that each always and unconditionally retains his own shape. That seems entirely necessary to me. Then let no poet tell us about Proteus or Thetis to say that, quote, the gods, in the likeness of strangers from foreign lands, adopt every sort of shape and visit our cities, end quote. Nor must they present Hera in their tragedies or other poems as a priestess collecting alms for, quote, the life-giving sons of the Argive river in Inachus. All right, and let's see what the footnote says. Inachus was the father of Io, who was persecuted by Hera because Zeus was in love with her. The source for the part of the story Plato quotes is unknown, of course, right? Or tells us other stories of that sort. Nor must mothers believing bad stories about the gods wandering at night in the shapes of strangers from foreign lands terrify their children with them. Such stories blaspheme the gods and at the same time make children more cowardly. They mustn't be told. But though the gods are unable to change, do they nonetheless make us believe that they appear in all sorts of ways, deceiving us through sorcery? Perhaps. What? Would a god be willing to be false either in word or deed by presenting an illusion? I don't know. Don't you know that a true falsehood, if one may call it that, is hated by all gods and humans? What do you mean? I mean that no one is willing to tell falsehoods to the most important part of himself about the most important things, but of all places he is most afraid to have falsehood there. I still don't understand. Well, you're not the only one. That's because you think I'm saying something deep. I simply mean that to be false to one's soul about the things that are, to be ignorant and to have and hold falsehood there is what everyone would least of all accept, for everyone hates a falsehood in that place most of all. That's right. Surely, as I said just now, this would be most correctly called true falsehood. Ignorance in the soul of someone who has been told a falsehood. Falsehood in words is a kind of imitation of disaffection in the soul, an image of it that comes into being after it and is not a pure falsehood. Isn't that so? Certainly. And the thing that is certainly a falsehood is hated not only by the gods, but by human beings as well. It seems so to me. What about falsehood in words? When and to whom is it useful and so not deserving of hatred? Isn't it useful against one's enemies? And when any of our so-called friends are attempting through madness or ignorance to do something bad, isn't it a useful drug for preventing them? It is also useful in the case of these stories we were just talking about, the ones we tell because we don't know the truth about those ancient events involving the gods. By making a falsehood as much like the truth as we can, don't we also make it useful? Right? We certainly do. Then, in which of these ways could a falsehood be useful to a god? Would he make false likenesses of ancient events because of his ignorance of them? It would be ridiculous to think that. Then there is nothing of the false poet in a god. Not in my view. Would he be false then through fear of his enemies? Far from it. Because of the ignorance or madness of his family or friends, then? No one who is ignorant or mad is a friend of the gods. Then there is no reason for a god to speak falsely. None. Therefore, the demonic and the divine are in every way free from falsehood. Completely. A god, then, is simple and true in word and deed. He doesn't change himself or deceive others by images, words, or signs, whether in visions or in dreams. That's what I thought as soon as I heard you say it. You agree, then, that this is our second pattern for speaking or composing poems about the gods. They are not sorcerers who change themselves, nor do they mislead us by falsehoods in words or deeds. I agree. So even though we praise many things in Homer, we won't approve of the dream Zeus sent to Agamemnon, nor of Aeschylus when he makes Thetis say that Apollo sang in prophecy at her wedding, quote, about the good fortune my children would have, free of disease throughout their long lives, and of all the blessings that the friendship of the gods would bring me. I hope that Phoebus' divine mouth would be free of falsehood, endowed as it is with the craft of prophecy, but the very God who sang, the one at the feast, the one who said all this, he himself it is who killed my son. There's a footnote that says, in Iliad, Book 2, lines 1 to 34, Zeus sends a dream to Agamemnon to promise success if he attacks Troy immediately. The promise is false. The source of the quotation from Aeschylus is unknown, of course. Right, end quote. Whenever anyone says such things about a god, we'll be angry with him. We refuse him a chorus and not allow his poetry to be used in the education of the young, so that our guardians will be as God-fearing and godlike as human beings can be. I completely endorse these patterns, he said, and I would enact them as laws. And that's the end of Book 2. And we will begin with the beginning of Book 3, our next episode. Till then, ladies and gentlemen, I bid you adieu.